HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Everyday.
Good Saturday evening, all. I'm C.S. Scatterly, and welcome to the Bahamas Tonight, the weekend edition. Thanks so much for joining us. The government moving one step closer to implementing the Freedom of Information Act. This act is expected to bring greater accountability for government agencies. It comes as a greater focus is placed on the Data Protection Act and its parameters. And as Clint Watson tells us tonight, the Prime Minister and the Education Minister highlighted the significance of both acts during a one-day symposium Friday at the Melia Nassau Beach Resort.
As the country moves toward the establishment of a Freedom of Information Act, which will grant access to certain public records, it is critically important to bring into focus the role of the Data Protection Act and its relationship to the Freedom of Information Act. Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald at the annual Forum on Data Protection spoke to the crucial linkages.
Given our culture, there is sometimes a misunderstanding of what should and shouldn't be allowed to enter the public domain. Many people often lament the fact that confidentiality seems to be non-existent regarding certain individuals or circumstances. The Data Protection Act is to ensure that there is protection for personal data. It is designed to protect people's individual rights and freedoms, and in particular their right to privacy with respect to the processing and access of personal data.
Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie says the protection of data, particularly an individual's personal data, is vitally important. He says there is no question that among the challenges of the 21st century world is a demand that greater emphasis and attention should be given to the protection of the individual's personal information.
As the Bahamas moves closer to the implementation of its information regime, it is of utmost importance that careful and considered balance is given to the right to privacy and the right to know. Privacy of one's personal information is as much a right that must be safely guarded as, of course, is the right of the public to know what its public and accountable institutions are doing. However, when the scale is tilted too far in either side of the equation, we find ourselves breaching fundamental rights.
The Prime Minister notes that the United Kingdom government has now appointed a cabinet commission to review their existing Freedom of Information legislation, while the European Union is still in preparation of its data protection regulations. Both of these initiatives, he says, are likely to affect our jurisdiction.
We have moved one step closer in implementing our information regime. I'm advised that the draft Freedom of Information Bill 2015 is out to the public for consultation. No doubt, there may be many comments generated from this consultation. It is my hope that the committee will give due regard to the comments and, where necessary and applicable, and to the extent possible, make the relevant adjustments.
Public consultation is also expected to take place on both bills. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Thanks, Clint. The people of France are in mourning tonight following mass killings, which has left at least 128 people dead. It's being categorized as France's deadliest massacre since World War II. And with government officials expected to visit Paris in 2 weeks to attend a high-level meeting on climate change, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, the Honorable Fred Mitchell, is expressing a number of concerns. Minister Mitchell says this type of behavior has to be condemned in the strongest terms, calling it simply horrific. He also extended condolences to the families of the victims.
The Bahamas has its voice right out the gate, supporting the values which we stand for, which is tolerance, democracy, pluralism, peaceful settlement of disputes. You know, that we have this horrific problem in our own country with violence that we have difficulty trying to get on top of. And so people are sympathetic with that. We have an honorary council in Kingston. We sent a note to her last night to reach out immediately to the French ambassador who lives in Kingston and make sure that he's aware of our concerns and our condolences and our thoughts and prayers. And we'll follow up with a diplomatic note when Monday comes.
Minister Mitchell confirmed that he has been in contact with both the Honorary Consulate and the High Commissioner to London as to whether or not any Bahamians were impacted by these attacks.
What about the safety and security of our own citizens if there are any in Paris? And given the way life is in these days, I'm sure there's some Bahamians who are in Paris. We have an honorary consul there. But Paris is represented by High Commissioner Ed Bethel, who is also ambassador to the UK. So I reached out to him and asked him if he could get some idea of whether and what the circumstances are for people who are Bahamians there. I happen to know with the purchase of the new Bahamas Air aircraft that pilots and technicians are in France, at least for training. And so I wondered if they were in Paris, but I spoke to the general manager of Bahamas Air, who says that they are in Toulouse, which is a town about 300 or 400 miles away from Paris. And so it appears that they're safe and secure.
With a delegation led by Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie expected to head to Paris later this month to attend a climate change conference, Minister Mitchell says given what has happened, he's unsure how these attacks might impact those plans. Bills were tabled earlier this week in the House of Assembly to overhaul the Bahamas Electricity Corporation. But under the new bills, the functions of the Bahamas Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, ERCA, will also be amended. Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis outlined ERCA's primary responsibilities under the new electricity bills.
To review and approve electricity tariff rates charged to the consumer, review of the need for additional electricity generation by independent power producers, establish rules and approve competitive processes where applicable for procurement of power generation resources conducted by BPL or any other public electricity supplier, and ensure such rules are fair, consistent, and compatible with the objectives and principles of the electricity sector and national energy policies.
The bills also address renewable energy and will require public electricity suppliers to submit renewable electricity plans, facilitate renewable energy self-generation projects, and regular review and approval of the plan by ERCA.
With proper justification and where applicable, ERCA will be enabled to make a determination as to whether power purchase and grid tie-in agreements may be entered into with independent power producers following a competitive procurement process and licensing by ERCA. The bill further empowers public electricity suppliers to grant permits to property owners to install facilities for renewable electricity generation sources for residential purposes using renewable energy sources of such size and quality as may be prescribed in regulatory or other measures to be issued by ERCA.
A COB employee being investigated for fraud and the murder count climbs by 2. That and more when the Bahamas Tonight, the weekend edition, continues.